I'd like to talk today about the word racism and the meaning behind it. Racism, when we hear it, pretty much is reserved for the liberal audiences, or at least our tyrannical, political correct culture. When somebody accuses somebody of racism, it obviously comes from the end that someone does harm to another race. Particularly, it is white people's favorite word. Racism is exclusively used by white people to call out other white people for treating non-whites not white. It's also used by non-whites, such as blacks, against other white people to call white people racist because black people just want self-determination and unapologetic blackness so they can do their own thing. In a way, racism, the word, is pretty much made for an egalitarian system or a liberal society. It assumes that people are not treated fairly and you are a racist because it's not on the same level of justice or equality that people are looking for. But in a more correct sense of the term, I think racism pretty much should be, or what it should mean, is racial hatred or racial tension. It shouldn't mean egalitarianism or equality. It should actually mean that there is some racial hatred toward him, that he's being racist or there's racist behavior. And whatever that connotates, it pretty much means, well, if the races are different and you are a race realist, then why even bring the word racist up if people are bound to take that way? Is there some good in human beings where, these groups of black people are racist because those white guys, honky, can't play the same act like them or something like that? I don't know. And yet there's liberal politics by other whites that assume that, it doesn't work that way because, racism racism is code word for anti-white, and you can only be, only white people can be racist. So we'll bring up the conclusion whether racism should be still be used in the next 10, 20, 30, or next century. Is it even valued? In fact, racism has only really been around, the word and the meanings, for 2 generations or 70 years. There's been debate whether that the word racism comes from the far left, whether that communists made it up, using as a term to do a communist ideology, or that racism actually has been coined by this black fascist named Lawrence Dennis, I think his name is, and it was just used as a term that if races were to multicultural or bicultural people had unfair advantages with one another, they would have racist behavior or racial tension. The word, why is it in the dictionary, is really to explain racial hatred with one another. However, it has now put up a new ideology in itself. And the word racism automatically means you subscribe to liberal ideology and the upheaval of trying to make everyone the same, or something stupid like that. Now, since I got that definition out of the way, we'll talk about the alt-right and racism. Racism, you could say, I don't like the alt-right because they're a bunch of racists. Well, the thing is, you should say they're a bunch of race realists, not exactly racist. And by using super secret data deconstruction, you can actually really find that they're really cruel racist and that they have hidden intentions behind what they say. So when we hear this identitarianism, quote unquote, it really is just white man Zionism. And if allowed, they hate black people and other non-whites. Pretty much. Now, as much as the alt-right will say, I don't hate anyone, I love everyone, and I want separation for everybody. But they're only saying that because they definitely know that it's a confessions of a reluctant hater, and they really do hate being around other non-whites, and that they prefer to be with people like themselves. And therefore, yes, it is okay to call them racist. Now, since what the alt-right has been doing has been actually ignoring the ideal and concept and philosophy of racism. They just want to make a society where that's no longer an issue because, well, it's a reality. The reality is racism is just an ideological thing. It doesn't mean racial hatred. It just means, well, people belong separate and they're healthy to belong to people like themselves. It's like that weird James Edward book, The R Word or Racism, Smacism or something like that. Some of these far right people will go and say that, well, race is a part of the discussion, and you can see it as a divide between two parties, between the party that says race is real and racial tension is inevitable, multicultural diversion is a source of tension and conflict, or that we have the other white people that uphold saying, well, racism only happens is because our egalitarian multicultural society is not working, and therefore we must enforce laws in order to work. Such therapeutical sessions have been stand-up comedy by Sarah Silverman and Margaret Cho, and this ideal of race play that most Jewish comedians do is a way for liberals to be racist, and yet supposedly subscribe by saying they're not racist, because I guess this is what liberals find funny. But again, racism, you can't ignore it, and it's not there, and you can't be, well, I'm an egalitarian, there's only one race, the human race. That's no longer a thing. What's happening today is a liberal society believes that we have to have this quote-unquote liberal feudalism happening, meaning that Black Lives Matter is there not to create a separate black ethno-state, but for white people to play into quote-unquote gives me that, so black people can live in their small once white cities of Detroit and then have black communes, but white people are going to have to pay for it while they go over there. Or if black people demand to have what they have, they're going to have to be policies with it. And that's why Black Lives Matter is there. That itself is a liberal thing. So if you think about it, this source of tension and conflict of racism is really troublesome on the liberal side, because it really just means people hate white people. And it really is also showing that people belong with people like themselves. Again, there is this, all over YouTube, there is a post-liberal consensus and red pilling of people being anti-liberal. When you're anti-liberal, it doesn't mean you're pro-racist. There are other people like Roaming Millennial and That Guy T and even Milo or Blair White, who are a part of this people of color or different minority people, and they are saying that, well, the natural order of law, which the alt-right would argue for. And still, it doesn't go by. It's still, people have to, the reason why your relationship's ending, because you're not egalitarian, he's not, I'm afraid you're a racist. That's what's really going about, which is really stupid. And that's why people are having such arguments on the internet. Now that it's the questioning that, okay, now you have a separation between what you would call the alt-right versus the alt-right. The alt-right being the people of color who are critical of liberal society, and those who are critical of liberal society but exclusively are one race, mostly white, and they're trying to give power to blacks and other non-whites to say that, well, if we're going to play identity groups, everybody's going to have to create the ethno-nationalist future. So there's the two divides right here. I do believe most of the Liberal Party is going out the door. A lot of them tend to be old baby boomers, now 40, 60 plus in an old world. They don't have the internet, they don't have phones, they don't have this social media stuff. They're dying out. They have poor understandings about realities of race, and they live in this kind of fairy tale of nihilism. Nihilism basically is rampant with the liberal classes. That's the only thing they're arguing for. And the alt-right definitely has a better advantage because it's giving them more of a beautiful life. If you're a beautiful guy that's strong and normal and healthy, you're hated. It's sad. So where do I stand on this? First, I'd like to say that there is racist behavior in the alt-right. And this behavior, I am actually, I don't like associating on the alt-right anymore. In fact, I would go further and say that the alt-right is dead. Now, that's a very outrageous claim to say right there, because what are you talking about? It's a growing movement. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. What are you talking about? Well, when I refer to the alt-right, I refer to like Richard Spencer's, Daniel Freiberg, that whole alt-right corporation that we're seeing right now. That has pretty much been a net negative for everything around us, and it's not working. It's bad, and pretty much the only guy left that I think has any responsibility or any intellectual thing is probably Greg Johnson of Countercurrents. He's pretty much the last prophet of the whole, what was the quote, the alternative right. The alt-right is now becoming what is pretty much the American Nazi Party in the 1960s. And so, as it's becoming a lot of fashion trend, there are a lot of people getting out of it because of the Unite the Right event, which I also attended. But this whole Unite the Right thing is, again, it is caused a lot of trouble because this is not exactly why people were anti-liberal. I'm not a white man Zionist. I didn't join the alt-right because I wanted white man Zionism. No, I was just pretty much a Deaf and June fan, and I just liked the whole right-wing aesthetics. And I'm pretty sure a lot of young people who are edgy and who live in the flyover country in the Midwest and have only a computer and nothing else, that's pretty much what they're interested in. They like things like that. It's about the good life, the good world, not nihilism. The liberal world, which invades all of the West Coast, East Coast, New York, and California, they're a bunch of paused, decadent, upper class nihilists. That we have a virus in the upper class that just needs to be purged. It's why we have a lot of people that admire Japan and China, and maybe Korea. But the point is, healthy societies are more intellectually non-white because white people are transhumanist and they want to go. What the project was almost half a century ago was go to the moon, to go to the stars. Now there's this project to create a super master white people race that's supposedly the Kalergi plan on steroids, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It's bad. It's unhealthy. So really, in this post-liberal society and medium, a lot of people who are quote-unquote red pill in the YouTube internet world are starting to realize that, can we imagine a post-liberal society where people are racially separated, or at least we can find that there's a Martin Heidegger future where there's space colonies of people who belong in Discord bubble spaces and are happy that way while going forward to the stars. That could work out, and human biodiversity could reign supreme. However, there are already people invested in multiculturalism and biculturalism, and there are already biracial people, and a small percentage of multiracial people. Therefore, those people who are biracial and multiracial should unite and go with their own people. Now, they could be white, Asian, or Eurasian. They have really 30 choices, and the amnesty argument, the choice between two, has always been white or Asian, and that's what they're part of. And there's always been arguments, well, if you're Eurasian, you might create the new white race, and that'll be the new definition of being white, or whatever you want to call it, and use a stupid negation of a whiteness argument, which is really stupid, or the new Asian people race. Again, this biculturalism is really confusing and causes tension and conflict. What needs to happen is people have to have self-determination and be more open about being with people like themselves. We cannot subscribe to the baby boomer multiculturalism anymore. So now, dealing with this word racism, will the word racism change its definition over time? I really believe that the word racism is in our dictionary because racism, what it means is racial hatred, one race against another race. You might want to call that normal, but that is the definition to describe people's, whether that mean a black person being Chinese or being racist to a black person, whatever, or blacks being racist to whites. You could use it in that egalitarian form, but right now, society is using the word racism only exclusively for the white interest and the white liberal doctrine. Again, this is a word that should be described racial conflict, not exactly an ideology. So I'm going to point this out and say, yes, the alt-right is racist. Matthew Heimbach is right. Matthew Heimbach is an open racist. He's proud. He's an open National Socialist, too. By the way, if you use the word Nazi, you're calling someone a socialist, So if Matthew Heimbach is open, he is a racist, yes. And then therefore, Richard Spencer, he might want to use the word identitarian. Let's use by dictionary term. He is a racist because he's going to cause racial tension to make his party happen. And if you want to call them a hater, I don't, and by the way, racism and hating is not the same. They're two different things. You could be a hater and a racist, but I think you can make a loving, caring racist like Matthew Heimbach, okay? So, and again, this is the tension of and this racist behavior in terms of racial conflict is bad. And I have to say, there are racist people that don't like me. And there are racist people that pretty much don't like others for just trying to do their own thing, right? If we have this weird ethno-nationalist future society, again, we're going on the Jared Taylor principle that diversity is a source of tension and conflict. And if that's true, then that means racism will happen. So the best way to stop racism is to separate and go with people like ourselves. Again, for that post-liberalism, there are people who are going to be deliberately racist. And we call those deliberate racist people white supremacists or just supremacists. You never really hear black supremacists, I don't know why, or Asian supremacists. And it does look like there's Asian supremacy coming around the corner. Maybe Asian Aryanism, I don't know. But again, there is this kind of ideal that, well, racial hatred will just inevitably create the Hannah Arendt totalitarian society. And this is what's evil too. We have two different blocks of the far right and the far left. We have the nationalist parties and the Antifa. And that is weird. It's this kind of strange battle, spiritual civil war white people are having. And this is a battle between the natural world versus the transhumanist. And so I think it's fun to be a racist transhumanist. However, what I mean by racist transhumanist is that, again, I'm not saying there's going to be these supremacist values or that there's going to be racial harm against a certain group of people. It's just that, again, people prefer to be with people like themselves. I'm actually an anti-racist, and you didn't know that. And I really think, well, again, I'm not this ideological person that says, oh yeah, I believe in the ideology of anti-racism. No, I'm saying it as in a term that I don't like racism. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's bad. And however, I do believe I am also a race realist. And I believe in the natural order. What's got to go is liberal baby boomers, because they just don't understand. And this communist Marxist ideology definitely has a hand over things, and things are just going to get more totalitarian as things go by. And we need Asian Aryanism, because Asian Aryanism is authentic. It's a beautiful ideology, a beautiful religion and philosophy. It's actually, in its core, not racist at all. It just flirts and has a hatred of liberals, because liberals are the most unartistic people ever. They're a bunch of nihilists. And Asian Aryanism is against nihilism. So to conclude, the word racism is only relevant when there's racial conflict with other people of two different races. And it's okay to say that's racist, this is racist. We're not going to delete the word. It's in word definition. That's what it means. We have to get rid of the ideological ideal that racism means egalitarianism. So, in a way, we also have to make all the races do their own thing and create this super libertarianism or this super whatever post-liberal. I'm all in favor of the civic nationalist and nationalist and other, hey, if you want to make a multicultural state, just do it over there in California. They'll separate. and they'll have their own thing. In fact, I would like California separated too, where at the bottom you have multicultural melting pot like Brazil, and up top you have Asian Aryan land. I would really love that. But again, people are just going to divide, and everything's really bad. And there needs to be civic order and health to the nation again. And we have to give rights for the artist, right? If an artist does flirts with a Toffengoff and a swastika and a rainbow flag, and he's some new deaf in June, don't call him racist for that. He's just being an artist. See, I hate this ideal of microaggressions and triggering. This is so stupid. And again, with this Jordan B. Peterson thing, it's a stupid postmodernist, and I can get into that. But again, I'm just saying is, yeah, there are a lot of racist people in the alt-right, and they're a bunch of douchebags, and I totally denounce that aspect. And that's why I don't consider myself alt-right, because the alt-right are a bunch of racist faggots.